Hello, good evening. Today is Sunday, June 7th, 2020, and I'll be talking about women in services computing. In particular, I will be presenting you with a recorded presentation of a featured address I gave in 2019, July, in Milan, Italy, at the Women in Services Computing workshop. Unfortunately, I could not attend that workshop in person, so my recorded presentation was played at the workshop. So Women in Services Computing, it is an organization that I founded with one of my colleagues at Carnegie Mellon University in Silicon Valley. She is Professor Jia Zhang. And so I have been attending the Services Computing Conference. It's a large IEEE Services Congress conference series since, I believe, around 2008. And I've had a number of publications in that conference. It is a collection of conferences, including IEEE Big Data, IEEE Cloud, and the flagship IEEE Web Services Conference, as well as IEEE Services, as well as a number of other conferences. So over the years, we found that while there was an increase with women participation, it was still not sufficient. There were far too many men than women. As I've always maintained or mentioned, that women represent around 50% of our society, which means that we should have at least 50% women in these various conferences. But then when you attend these conferences, you find that, say, in cybersecurity, there are around 10% women. And then in data science, maybe around 25% women, and services computing conference somewhere in between. So I talked to my colleague, Professor Zhang, and we discussed having a Women in Services Computing workshop as part of this conference, because by then I had already organized Women in Cybersecurity, the WISIS conference in 2016, and also participated in Stanford WIDS conference series, and we hold events. Stanford WIDS, as part of the Stanford WIDS, we hold the Dallas event. And so I felt that we really needed to have something for services computing, because what are services? It's web services as well as other services. It's service-oriented architecture paradigm. And if you look at the cloud, it's consisting of services, right? You have a service-oriented cloud, and that will include data as a service, security as a service, and the more popular three services are infrastructure as a service, and then you have the platform as a service, and then applications or software as a service. So whatever we do today, it's based on the service-oriented paradigm. So for instance, when I teach a class, say online, I'm the service provider and my students are the service consumers, and the University of Texas, Dallas provides us with a platform, and that platform is sort of third party. So I register with the third party, which is the UT Dallas, and students also register, and then I provided by UT Dallas. So service is part of our society, whether we get medical services, healthcare services from our physicians and hospitals, and financial services from the banks. It's all based on the service-oriented paradigm. So, and cloud actually is everywhere, right? I mean, it is sort of pervasive, and lots of corporations now have got their own clouds, or we have Amazon's public cloud, that's Amazon's AWS, the web services based cloud. So we need cloud computing, especially with the massive amounts of data that are being collected, stored, integrated, analyzed and shared. So anyway, my colleague and I, we founded the Women in Service-Oriented Workshop, and that was in 2017. And that was in Honolulu, Hawaii. So that was, we had about, I think it was about one evening. We started, I believe, around 5 o'clock, and then we finished at 8. We had some of the top women in services computing, including Elisa Bertino from Queen's University and Ling Liu from Georgia Tech, as well as many other brilliant women. And so what we did was we had a sort of a get-together at the end where we had dinner together. And there were quite a few women at that workshop, even though it was the first workshop and it was only in the evening. And so, you know, we networked. It was really good for the junior faculty and researchers. We had researchers from IBM, Tokyo in China, and Almaden, as well as other companies and professors from all over the world. Okay, so that was a success. And so we decided to repeat it in 2018, and the Services Congress was in San Francisco, and we had a very successful workshop. So this time we had, I believe, half-a-day workshop. We started around, I believe, 8:30, and we finished around 12:30. So I believe I gave the opening keynote address, and we also had many brilliant professors and from companies, and some of the ladies who attended the Services Computing, the Women's Workshop in 2017, they were also present in 2018. And then we finished it with a lunch with all the ladies, and that was a great networking event for us. And so we decided to have it also in 2019, and that was in Milan, Italy. And I believe we had some newcomers chairing the workshop, but we provided the support. And unfortunately, I had a clash with some personal event. And so the last minute, I could not attend the workshop. Nevertheless, I recorded the presentation. As I said, I gave one of the featured addresses. And so that is what you are going to hear now, my recorded presentation. And then I will say a few concluding remarks at the end. So I'm going to share my screen. And it's like Women in Services Computing. Let's see. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay, so please listen to the presentation.
Hello,
thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to give this presentation. And I'm sorry I'm unable to be with you today due to some personal reasons. So my talk is going to be on security and artificial intelligence, SecAl, and why it is an area that is important for women. So here is the outline, the motivation, why security and AI for women in services computing. And then I'll get into some technical details, artificial intelligence for cybersecurity, in particular focus on malware analysis, insider threat detection, and then security for AI, such as adversarial machine learning, trustworthy machine learning, access control models, and security policies. And then very briefly, artificial intelligence causing security privacy violations. And what we need here, privacy and security aware artificial intelligence. And finally, where do we go next? So, security AI for women in services computing. So, I co-founded this group, Women in Services Computing, with Professor Jia Zhang. And this was in 2017. And we had a panel, and some of the panelists, I believe, will be presenting today. And then last year, 2018, I gave the keynote address, I believe, on why women should focus on services computing. And at that presentation, I said, a high-paying job is a must for every woman. Okay, so there are so many choices that you can have if you have a job that is high-paying. And so that is one of the main reasons I have been involved in motivating younger women in cybersecurity, data science, and now in services computing. Services computing is something that is absolutely critical in computer science because we live in a service-oriented world. And so services computing integrated with security and AI will give us women high-paying jobs in academic and industry. IEEE Services Computing is a forum to bring together researchers and practitioners, as well as educators in services, cloud, big data, AI, ML, and security. AI, ML techniques have been applied for cybersecurity for close to 2 decades, but more recently, there's been a lot of emphasis on the attacks on the AI, ML techniques. It is critical that we answer questions such as, how can the machine learning and other AI systems be protected from the attacks? So very briefly, artificial intelligence for cybersecurity, this problem, there has been around for a while. And as I said, almost 2 decades, researchers have been developing solutions. And so one of our recent research areas was to apply AI for insider threat detection. Insider threat meaning that people who pretend to be good people, but they are really bad. So in the machine, there are processes that pretend to be good processes, but they could be malicious. So we have designed and developed an ensemble-based machine learning algorithm, and it's based on supervised and unsupervised learning. And the challenge here, because data is streaming, we are developing models that are evolving, right? So we develop a set of models, and then as new data comes in, some of the models are discarded, and then new models are built. So that's the essence of our approach. And so we have looked at both supervised and unsupervised learning. And our main machine learning technique that we have examined are support vector machines. And in unsupervised learning, because we have also used compression-based techniques to model common behavior sequences. And then we find that the classifier that's resulted from that is quite accurate. And the ensemble of classifiers allows the unsupervised approach to outperform traditional static learning approaches. So here's a picture. So you can see that there are system logs. And what happens is that you look at K chunks. So you have data streams, and the data streams are separated into chunks. And these chunks are used to develop the models. So you look at K chunks, and then you develop an ensemble of models, right, using support vector machines and learning. And then when the K+1 chunk arrives, then you extract features and you do testing. And the results actually go back, and then you start all the process again. So when you are developing these models, what you really do is that if some of the models later on are not good, because as the data changes, the models will also change. And so you discard the models, and then you develop new models. So that's the strength of our approach. Okay, so the next topic that is really a very, very hot research topic, and that is securing artificial intelligence systems. And in particular, an area called adversarial machine learning. So the adversary modifies data to defeat the learning algorithms. It's not concept drift, it's not online learning. Adversary adapts to avoid being detected. It could be during training time, testing time, and so on. So essentially, the adversary is trying to cover its tracks so that we don't detect the adversary. Adversary is trying to learn what our strategies are and trying to thwart us. And then we are trying to learn the adversary strategy. So it becomes game playing. So you can see here, there are these red squares are the bad instances and the blue circles are the good instances. And this is the line for support vector machine. And so what happens, what the adversary is trying to do is to push the bad instances into good instances so that we won't catch the bad instances. That is the adversary's objective. But our objective is to thwart the adversary. So what are we doing? We look at some of the attacks. So I'm not going to go into the details of this mathematics here. There are a number of attacks. So we look at free range attacks, and we have also looked at targeted attacks. And the challenge here is that we are only looking sort of certain classes of attacks. In reality, there could be many, many, many more attacks. And that's what we have to be concerned about. Because remember, the adversary, all he has to or she has to find is one loophole to get in. But we have to cover everything. We have to provide a 100% solution, which is almost impossible today. So here's what we do. So what we're trying to do is to take this line, the adversary support vector machine, the line, and then we are applying our algorithm to move it so that some of the attacks can be found out. Because remember, adversary is trying to thwart our behavior, and so he or she is trying to make the bad instances look good. So here, the red crosses are the bad instances and the green circles are good instances. So if the line is here, several of these bad instances would not be found out. But by pushing the line, these bad instances are showing up, right? And so we can cover or we can find out more of the bad instances. That is our challenge. Black dashed line is a standard SVM classification boundary, and the blue line is the adversarial SVM classification boundary. Again, our goal is to have the blue line to come up with an appropriate solution for the blue line. Now we can move it really far, but then that defeats the purpose, right? And so that means even good instances may show up as bad instances, because we really want to not only minimize false positives, we also want to minimize false negatives. So that's the whole idea. Aspect that we are working on, myself and my two colleagues, is the trustworthy machine learning, right? So one thing is that you take this machine learning algorithm and then you use hardware, right, to execute some of the security critical components. And so one piece of hardware we have explored is the Intel SGX for the trusted execution environment. So I won't go into the details too much, but we take the data analytics or machine learning algorithm, and the security critical components will be executed in trustworthy hardware or trusted execution environment. So the challenge is to separate these algorithms and figure out which ones are trustworthy or have to be executed in the trusted execution environment. Finally, the one last topic is that it's something that's been around for a while, because data mining causing privacy security violations. Since around 2000, there's been a lot of research. But now we're talking about not just data mining, it's data mining, machine learning, the entire field of AI that uses reasoning. So the machine learning algorithms and other AI techniques can reason with data and uncover highly private and sensitive information, right? So there are some solutions, example, privacy preserving machine learning like decision trees. So you have the original data, add some noise, and the modified machine learning process. And the whole idea is to have the final results to be the same. Even though we have added noise, the whole objective is to have essentially the end result to be the same. And so while there has been quite a lot of research in this area that lasts 18, 19 years, we need to take a fresh look at it, especially with these various AI techniques. Finally, where do we go next? Women are significantly underrepresented in cybersecurity. I would say only around 10% women. Women are also underrepresented in AI machine learning. I'm told it's around 30%. And even in the area of cloud and services computing, I'm sure you'll be able to look at the attendees at the conference, and you will find that there are many more men than women. So how can women take advantage of these highly intellectually challenging and yet very monetarily lucrative fields? So we have to learn these challenging and yet lucrative fields. And it's our duty to motivate the younger generation. And so when I say the younger generation, for me, a 30 or 40-year-old would be a younger generation. But then for a 30 or 40-year-old, you've got to look at 20 and even in the teens, and also those starting elementary school and educate them. We all have a duty to support women. IEEE Services Computing, with its focus on web services, cloud, and big data, it can be an ideal forum to bring researchers, practitioners, and educators together. Women in Services Computing workshop, it's a huge opportunity for us. For us women to learn from each other and motivate each other. It should not be a one-day-a-year event. We need to form a community and share our experiences. And so hopefully some of us can get together and form a Facebook group so that we can share our experiences and make it sort of entirely technical and some professional support. In time, I believe that we could become a formidable team and be a role model for the next generation, especially the next generation of women. Again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give this presentation. Bye.
Okay, so I would like to thank my colleagues, Murad Kantarjalu and Latifa Khan. We work very closely. Latifa Khan on applying machine learning for cybersecurity, and Murad Kantarjalu for adversarial machine learning. And Ms. Rhonda Walls, our project coordinator, who supports us a lot in all aspects of our Cybersecurity Research and Education Institute. So I just want to add a little bit more. Stop sharing. I want to conclude that, again, it's really important for us to support women. And I would say that the women, the younger women today, they have some advantage because they have older women like myself and some of my colleagues to support them and motivate them and mentor them. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I got here. So I'm the Founders Chair Professor at the University of Texas at Dallas. I'm a Tamil from Sri Lanka. And in 1975, I got married as I was finishing my bachelor's degree at the University of Ceylon. Sri Lanka was called Ceylon, in mathematics and physics. And my husband was finishing his PhD at the University of Cambridge in England. And so we both went to University of Bristol. My husband had a postdoctoral research position, and I started my graduate studies, master's, and then I continued with my PhD, and then we moved to the United States in 1980, just after I finished my PhD. At that time, my son was a baby, some 8 months old. And so that August, I was actually offered, we went to New Mexico Tech, New Mexico, Socorro, New Mexico. My husband had a position, a research scientist position at the Petroleum Recovery Research Center. And then I was offered actually a tenure track position at New Mexico Tech. And that was in July of 1980. That was 40 years ago, because we arrived in the US in May 28, 1980. So what happened was, I felt that I couldn't really handle taking care of a baby and then having to work for tenure and so on. And so I chose to take a visiting faculty position. But when you do that, then actually you sort of lose out, in the sense it's harder to get back into the tenure track position. So then after that, my husband moved to a 3M company in Minneapolis, and so, St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I joined the University of Minnesota, and I did some research in algorithmic information theory, because my PhD was in theoretical computer science. And while being on the faculty, visiting faculty, I also took some courses, and then I had enough credits to get a master's in computer science, more practical aspects, because I was educated in the UK, and there you just focus on your subjects. So all of my PhD research was just on one thing, the theory of computation. So when I took these courses, I got really interested in the practical aspects, especially systems. And so I joined Control Data Corporation. It was a computer, one of the largest, I think number 3 computer company at that time in 1983. And I was a software developer, worked on distributed systems and computer networks. And we were working on the first release of a product called CDC-Net, Control Data Corporation's Network or something. Okay, so I did development for 2 years, and we had the first release 2 years later in 1985. At that time, I really wanted to get back into research, because I had an adjunct faculty and a graduate member at the graduate faculty member at the University of Minnesota. So I was supervising students with my colleague at the University of Minnesota, but I really wanted to get back into research. But again, as I said, you've got to really focus in your career, because once you have sort of had a small detour, you know, taking visiting faculty positions and a software development job, although I enjoyed it. So 1985, I had a lucky break. What was that? 3 things had to happen, right? So I became a US citizen 5 years from 1980. And then Honeywell had a position, they had applied for they had worked on a proposal on a contract to design one of the first secure, high assurance secure database management systems. And the third was that Honeywell had to interview me, and so they had to win the contract, and then they had to interview me and, you know, like me and wanted to, and should want to hire me. So all 3 things had to happen, and you can compute the odds of everything happening at the same time, but it did happen. And so that was my lucky break. So I got into cybersecurity. The fall of 1985, started reading up, and then I joined Honeywell, and I was there for the until we finished our project designing the high assurance database system called Lock Data Views, and also a number of other projects for Honeywell's divisions, and also a network operating system for NASA. So I got lots of experience there. And then my husband moved to the MIT to join their faculty as a research professor. And then I worked for the MITRE Corporation. I joined them in January 1989. And then I was there for 16 years, worked on a number of projects in secure database systems, in data mining, and real-time systems, integrating real-time and security. So I've got lots of opportunities to work on very interesting research projects. And then, so I was there for 16 years. The last 3, I went to the National Science Foundation, and as a program director, 2001 October to 2004 September 30th, so October 1 to September 30th. And it was soon after 9/11, so I got to work on data mining for counterterrorism, work with various agencies, and also manage proposals on information management and data analytics, as well as start a new program on data and application security and privacy, and then be part of the Cyber Trust, Cybersecurity Trust, or Cyber Trust is what it was called at that time. And it's now called the SATC program at NSF. And so I finished that in September, and then October I joined UT Dallas to start the Cybersecurity Research Center, and then that evolved into the Cybersecurity Research and Education Institute. And last Sunday, May 31st, I had given a presentation of our institute. It's now on YouTube. So once I finish this presentation, I will also post this presentation. Once I finish this video, I'll post this presentation on YouTube. You can check it under my YouTube channel. And so what I'm saying, the lesson here is that I never gave up, meaning that, okay, so I always wanted a tenure track faculty position. Well, I became a tenured professor when I joined. But throughout, I was working and publishing papers. So whatever I did my work first. But whatever I did, I also got the opportunity to publish. So by the time I joined UT Dallas, I had probably around 50 or 60 journal papers and several conference papers and given some keynote addresses. So you've got to keep working and also keep yourself motivated. And at that time I had some good supporters, and they were women. Okay, so for example, Maria Zemankova from NSF, Elisa Bertino, she was in Milan at the time, University of Milan. Now she's at Purdue. And then Marian Suriti, who was at the Department of Navy doing research. So I had really a very strong support system, and I supported them and they supported me. So that is really important, to find a network. And we really didn't have mentors at that time because we were all around the same age. And so we supported each other, but we didn't really have senior women. But the younger women today, they are very fortunate because they've got, women like myself and Elisa and so on, Professor Bertino. I've seen a lot of the women I mentored, they have turned into brilliant researchers. Example, Elena Ferrari, she gave, I believe, the keynote address at this particular Women in Services workshop in this Milan in July 2019. She's also now an ACM fellow. And so there are many other women that we have mentored as part of Women in Cybersecurity, Women in Data Science, and hopefully now Women in Services Computing. Okay, so one of the things I had mentioned, I noticed that we should start a Facebook group, but so many things happened after that, right? We were busy and we wanted to get prepared for this year's conference, which was supposed to be in Beijing in July, but now all that is postponed, unfortunately, to COVID-19. I believe the conference now is in October, November. I have to write a note to talk to the conference organizers. Hopefully we can have this workshop at the IEEE Services Congress, which is going to be also in Beijing. I don't know whether it's going to be in person or whether it's virtual, but I believe that many of us will be participating virtually at this conference. So these are sort of my key points, right? You have to get a mentor. You really have to form a support group, and I'll be there for you. And also you have to really work hard. And so how did I get into services computing? So once you work in cybersecurity and data science, and then services is really natural, right? Because whatever we do, we all of this things like, our day-to-day life, we are living in a service-oriented world, right? So I got into services, I believe, around 2005, 2006. We had a graduate PhD student who worked in services, computing, and security. So, and also semantic web, I had gotten into it in the late 90s, early 2000. And then from there, services went to cloud. And so this conference, the IEEE Services Congress is an ideal venue for us to work in areas like cloud and security and web services and security, and also bringing AI and data science and security into web services and the cloud. And so I will end my presentation. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that that we want to really continue with this sort of momentum we have built. And I know it's really dark outside, meaning, with COVID-19 and so many other things going on. But I want to leave you with this: never, ever give up. You always have to motivate yourself. And I've been in the professional workplace now 40 years, academia, commercial industry, the federally funded research and development center, and the government. So wide experience. I hope I get to work for another 20 years because there's so much work to do. And so that's what I want to leave you with, because there are many opportunities out there. I know it's hard, especially for us women. It's not as easy as it is for men, but we have come a long way. And so we still have to do a lot more. And I really hope that each of you would take the opportunity to mentor the women who are junior to you. As I said, right, a role for me is a junior faculty, not junior faculty, but it's junior to me. And similarly, a 40-year-old, a 20 to 30-year-old will be a junior. Even a 20-year-old can mentor a 10-year-old. So that is a sort of support system that we need. And I'll be continuing to give these video presentations because, with COVID-19, it's really important, I think, for me, I feel, to motivate the women out there and who want to learn. So about once a week, either the keynote presentations I give at conferences, or like this event, it happened last year, the Women in Services Computing. But I wanted to also, do give this recorded presentation, which was actually recorded a year ago, and post it on YouTube. So next week, I'll try to find some good topic to motivate everyone. And then there are a number of keynote addresses I'm going to give over the next 3 months. So those keynote addresses, because these days we have to videotape our keynote addresses and send it to the conference website or whatever, the IEEE or ACM website to publish. But I also post these presentations on YouTube. So please stay safe and healthy and be motivated, and please mentor the women, because we women, we need mentoring and we need support. Thank you very much.